It's yet another episode of the Locked On Coyotes podcast. We go through more prospects and we discuss three different prospects, whether or not these three players are on track to do something good in the next few years. All that and more on today's episode of Locked On Coyotes.
You're Locked On Coyotes, your daily podcast on the Arizona Coyotes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Robyn Leonio. That's Carl Pavlock right beside me on today's episode of Locked On Coyotes. I want to thank everyone for making this show your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, which once again means we'll never have a paywall. Hope you guys also had a great weekend. It is now Monday. It was a really, really hot weekend here in Arizona. I am still trying to cool myself down. I got myself a spiked EGs, and it's refreshing. That's for damn sure. As we get ready to talk some prospects today.
Yeah, I have just water myself. Not spiked water, unfortunately, just regular water. And yeah, it should be a fun episode. We're talking prospects. Before we get started, we do want to mention that today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts.
But now let's get to the our prospects. We got three prospects we want to talk about today. We got Victor Söderström, Nathan Smith, and Jack McBain. Söderström is the only one who's actually been with the organizations for longer. Smith and McBain acquired earlier this season. We'll mention more about them in a little bit. But let's get this to Söderström, Carl, because this was his second actual season with Arizona. Technically, I think last year was his first, but only played 4 games. Played mostly in Tucson. But this is his second. He completed the second year of his contract.
Yeah, it's a play. So Victor Söderström is a player whose development has been heavily impacted by COVID-19. He was drafted in 2019, so I think he spent a year overseas where they're just like, "Hey, we don't want you to have to deal with any of this." Came to Arizona, spent the time in Tucson, like you said. Got a couple of call-ups in Arizona. Hasn't shown that he's really ready to be a full-time NHL player yet, but I would say he's probably the Coyotes' best defensive prospect right now.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, when he was called up, they didn't rush him a lot. They didn't kind of push him to do too much because, you don't want to stress him the hell out, right?
Yeah.
You want to make sure he develops in all the right ways, and that's why they called up your Cam Denines, your Dyson Mayos, and whatever, because they're not to put offense to any of to those players, but they're they were the just the wolf bait.
Yeah. Victor Söderström definitely has the higher ceiling of all of the Coyotes defensemen, and any kind of premature call up could adversely affect that. I think is kind of the mindset of the franchise going into it. And you don't really want to do that. There's no real reason to do it. It's we talked about Prospetov a lot this season, and it's the same kind of logic for that. Victor Söderström is still only 21 years old, so there's absolutely no reason to rush him.
Oh yeah, I know, absolutely. He's definitely very, very young, and we talked about it. Defensemen take longer to develop and everything like that. So and again, to kind of talk about when we're talking about the draft prospects, with our draft experts, we're we all say the same thing. The Coyotes are in no rush to put any of their best prospects out there. So,
Yeah.
like, why do it? If you have time to develop in the right spots, then have them do that.
Yeah, it's I'm glad we got to see a few instances of Victor Söderström. I was kind of worried because he didn't have the best year in Tucson last year. No one seemed to have a really good year in Tucson.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say he had a great 16 games with the Coyotes either, but nothing that was really abhorrent. Nothing that really stood out. Played in a couple of games at the end, and looked pretty okay. I do see that he did finish, with a minus. Hang on, sorry, the wrong spot.
Is it minus
Uh,
7?
-7. We've talked about how plus minus isn't the
Yeah, you
most.
don't you don't use it as you don't use it as a baseline for everything. You kind of you use it to like understand more, a little bit more, in like to kind of complement some of the stuff we already knew,
Yeah,
right? And minus 7. Let's say this: if you're minus single digits for a defenseman, that's not terrible.
yeah. I will also
For the
add
Coyotes.
he was a -2 in 2 back-to-back games against the Colorado Avalanche. So that's really going to hurt your numbers. But it's also the Colorado Avalanche, so it's pretty understandable. Like there's plenty of players who are going to make you pay with an inexperienced defenseman on the ice, which Söderström definitely is.
Yeah. And plus, he played the equal amount of games with the Roadrunners this year and last year, with 9 more points. He had 10 points in 32 games with the Roadrunners last year versus 19 points in 32 games with the Roadrunners this year.
That's
Um,
good.
and if you want to use the plus minus again, he was a minus 16 last year and is a minus 12 this time around. So.
Yeah. So definitely, a little bit of an improvement on that end, which is great to see. Victor Söderström's, I think, job is just kind of continue to improve, continue to look better each year. I do not think he's going to be with the Coyotes for most of the season next year. Potentially could be a call up, but I think the Coyotes are going to want to have a little bit more older defensemen, like veteran players on the blue line, which, hopefully we don't see as many Tucson Roadrunners. Like there's a couple where, like JJ Mosier, do you really need him in the NHL? Maybe. Victor Söderström, do you need him in the NHL? Absolutely not.
Oh yeah, no. Exactly. That's the point. Because and I think it's all based off of that ceiling that you mentioned, right? Because you want to make sure that they get the right seasoning possible to make sure they're 100% ready for that for that jump, and that you don't want to um, stress out one of your best prospects. And like you said, at the beginning, Victor Soderstrom is the Coyotes' best defensive prospect right now.
Yep.
And unless the Coyotes draft some big name this draft, which we don't know. They have 3 picks in the first round, so it's like,
Yeah.
but
Or it could be part like of a massive trade. We talked about potentially trading Jacob Chikrin. Like getting a defensive prospect back could be like a big part of that because you're giving up a defenseman. Might as well get one back.
absolutely, absolutely. But overall, what would you say is um, your hope for Social in the next couple years? You were kind of mentioned next year that not to play with the Coyotes like full time, which obviously we already know that, but
Yeah.
just like
Uh,
next couple years.
I would like to see him like just continue to do well in Tucson. I'd like to see him get his point numbers up. He was tied as kind of like a more offensive prospect. And you said he had how many points with the Roadrunners?
This season,
19.
19. Yeah.
That's fine. I would like to see more. I'd also like to see him get some more goals, to be honest, because
Mhm.
3 goals, 16 assists. You don't see too many sniper defensemen, but I would like to see that sort of confidence develop. And then, 3 years from now start to see him like really knocking on the Coyotes' door.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, um, and I think he'll get there. He will
Yeah.
definitely get there, especially because the Roadrunners prospect system, their development system, has worked out in the last years. The last 2 years have been poor for the team, but they bang out some good prospects. As like they put out some good prospects to NHLers in the last few years.
Yeah. And they did that during extremely trying times, dealing with both a global pandemic as well as like the Coyotes just losing all of their players due to injury.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we still got more to get to on this episode of Locked On Coyotes. We're going to talk about the other prospects out there. We're going to do that in just a moment. But first, I want to let you guys know that I run a busy schedule, which pretty much means that I don't have time to get all the daily vitamins and minerals that I can get. For my daily intake. So that's why I tell you guys about our partner at From Athletic Greens and their product AG1. It's something that I use about every day, and it's really as simple as just just one scoop of this thing in a cup of water every day, and it gives me more vitamins and minerals, it's about 75 high quality vitamins and minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, adaptogens, and a bunch of it all to help me get my day started right. It helps with my immune system, energy, recovery, focus, and aging. And plus it tastes pretty darn good, and it's cheaper than your daily cold brew habit. So it's really easy to use. Once again, all you just need is a couple of it in water a day, and it's just that simple. So I want you to do, guys, check it out yourself too. Athletic Greens actually giving you an opportunity to get a free 1 year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is go to athleticgreens.com/NHL network. Once again, it's athleticgreens.com/NHL network to take ownership over your health. Pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. So we also have a favor to ask you guys. We put together a survey so we can learn more about the listeners like you and make your favorite Locked On podcast even better. This is your opportunity to tell us what you like and don't like about Locked On Podcast. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey right now to get started. It won't take very long, and everyone that completes the survey can qualify for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Ticketmaster gift cards. So to take our audience survey, once again, go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey. Thanks again for your help. So now let's go ahead and get to two more prospects. Once again, on this episode of Locked On Coyotes, Robyn Leonio and Carl Pavlock. We got an interesting more set of prospects. We got two people set up, both who acquired close to the trade deadline this season, Carl. We'll start with Nathan Smith, who is he was acquired in the trade. Which trade was that?
He was acquired from the Winnipeg Jets along with Brian Little's contract in exchange for a 2022 fourth-round pick. Brian Little has 2 more years left with a cap hit of $5,291,000 or $5,291,000.
Side note of that, Coyotes are going to weaponize the cap again. It's gonna we already know this. It's
yeah.
Um,
Although I saw recently that Buffalo is looking to acquire cap hits, so other teams are stealing the strategy. So
I mean, weaponizing the cap works. What they're realizing, especially if you do it right.
Absolutely. I think it was a good trade. Nate Smith was a Hobey Baker finalist. He looked good in his 10 games, had 2 goals, 2 assists. He's a center. Coyotes definitely need centers. And it kind of fits with Bill Armstrong's strategy of acquiring like slightly older players looking to jumpstart the rebuild. We saw it with JJ Mosier, who we talked about earlier, and we're seeing it with Smith and McBain.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's nicer to see stuff like that. Acquiring NCAA people is a really interesting move, right? Because some people a lot of teams have not done as much of that because players will go back to the NCAA. They won't do much, and then like they'll stay all 4 years, and then they're like, it's like, oh well, now we don't get to see this player for 4 years because now they're stuck, or else like because like we can't send them back to the NCAA if they're not ready. If once we send them a contract, they're done. They're no longer college eligible.
Yeah.
We don't want to screw them over that way. So like, but with McBain, it was different because he had already spent 3 years at the university at Minnesota State. Sorry, I was about to say University of Minnesota, but Minnesota State University. And his last year, looking at his stats, were really good. Right, he was 50 points in the 38 games played with Minnesota State. And I mean,
Yeah.
there's a reason why, like you mentioned, he was a Hobie Baker Award finalist. Like he was because he played that good.
Yeah, he really blew up his third year, and you know something that we have seen a lot of people worry about is, are the Coyotes going to be able to attract free agents?
Mm-hmm.
It was a big issue when the team was owned by the NHL. I can tell you that when there was ownership drama, that was a very common thing that I saw talked about. Like, free agents don't want to sign here, but something that we talked about all this year is the Coyotes are a great place to go if you have something to prove. And Smith definitely has something to prove. He didn't think he was going to get that chance with Winnipeg. It sounds like, doesn't have much center competition with the Coyotes. What biggest person probably would be Travis Boyd, like maybe Nick Schmaltz, but Schmaltz doesn't play that much center. Spends most of his time on the wing. So yeah, there's definitely a spot for him. It's really just up to him to kind of show what he can do.
Yeah, it really is, and I think based off of what we've been able to see, like, and again, he only played 10 games. Yeah, I think in those 10 games, he kind of already proved that like he can fit, like he can slot right into the Bill Armstrong and Andre Tourigny system.
Yeah.
Like it looks like it was like it looks like he didn't even need like warm up. Like first game, he looked like it's like, oh, he looks ready.
Yeah, I mean, like, what wasn't he? Wasn't he in the Frozen Four? I believe. I
I
think he had a pretty good postseason, but like he has been in practice. Like you said, he played 38 games, so it's not like he was like rusty or
Yeah,
anything.
he was in the Frozen Four. He was actually in the national championship game. Minnesota State
Yeah.
was. So
Didn't win, if I recall. Is that correct?
no, Denver did.
Yeah. So I mean, talk about wanting something to prove something. Like, you're a Hobie Baker finalist. Your team loses in the championship game. Like, that's gonna set you up with a chip on your shoulder.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And especially more so because like I'm sure there's a lot of crap that some people will get when you end up, lately especially joining the Arizona Coyotes because like, oh, you're joining what a lot of other people across the U.S. are calling a quote poverty franchise, which again is a lot of just bullshit. Just kind of just like people just saying that kind of shit just because. But for him, it's just like, oh, now I see this as an opportunity because people talk crap, but I can shine here.
Yeah.
Like it's just not more of that it's a bad team. It's just that it's a team that I have opportunity with, a team that I have an opportunity to be the guy potentially down the
Well,
road.
it's also a bad team. Like, that is why you have that opportunity.
Exactly.
And if you could stick around, like, the a team that's going to be bad for a couple of years, like, they're going to get some quality prospects in the pipeline. Like, I'm sure he watched Dylan Gunther highlights, and it's like, look, I'm not going to play with Gunther this year. Not going to play with Gunther next year, except for possibly
Preseason.
preseason, maybe the last couple games of the year. If he, if
Or first five or whatever.
yeah. So, but like, maybe the year after that, there's definitely a reason why, if you're Nate Smith, like, there's reasons you want to be part of the Coyotes.
I mean, if you're any prospect and you look at who's in the system right now and who might be in the system down the road, like there is a lot of reason to be like, oh yeah, I want to be in this pipeline.
Yep, definitely.
And Nate Smith is definitely one of those people. And and again, the I think his 4 points in his first 10 games with the Coyotes were definitely a sign that he's come ready, especially at his age at 23 for a center. Still pretty darn young.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, we still got more to get to. What actually before that, you kind of already mentioned a little bit, but down the road, let's say, yeah, we kind of like 3 years from now, where does
Uh,
Smith slot within this roster?
so he only has 1 year left on his contract, but he's going to be a restricted free agent. I think that unless he has a phenomenal year, he's going to be on a bridge deal. 3 years from now, hopefully he has like a career year to get that like nice payout, which lines up with him being 26. That's about time for him to be entering his prime.
Absolutely, absolutely. So definitely see him as a top 6 right there.
Uh, maybe not top 6. I'm thinking more middle 6 for right
Middle
now.
6.
Yeah.
That's fair. That is definitely fair. Well, we still got more to get to on this episode of Locked On Coyotes. We still got one more prospect to talk about. Another player acquired this season via trade. That in just a little bit, but first a quick word from Carl.
So I have a message from our friends at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports information. You can find all the latest sports developments, news, and odds, including this year's basketball championship matchup, the NHL Stanley Cup Final, Major League Baseball, and of course, fighting news from MMA and UFC boxing. Did you bet on the Tampa Bay Lightning to beat the New York Rangers in 6? Probably not too many people. If you did, yeah, good for you. But you're definitely going to want to look in and get more information in upcoming preparation for the series against the Avalanche. And BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information. That includes live betting, esports, and more. Head over to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts.
So now let's go ahead and move on to one last prospect of this episode. We're going to talk another one acquired via trade. You have the trade details on this one, but it was the acquisition of Jack McBain.
Jack McBain traded from the Minnesota Wild in exchange for Vancouver's 2022 second round pick. So no contract for this one. I think McBain was like the bigger story than Smith. It seemed like both were probably the two biggest NCAA players, and I didn't really expect the Coyotes to get both. But like there was a fair amount of surprise about McBain. And lots of Simpsons gifts. That was fun. But I thought he played well. He is a bigger player than Smith. Smith is listed at 6'0", 177 pounds. McBain, 6'3", 201, only 22, so still growing.
Cap Friendly has a different thing from McBain.
What do they have?
Cap Friendly lists McBain 6'4", 218.
I'm going off the Coyotes website, so maybe he lost weight at some point.
But he wouldn't have lost height.
Gotta love the non-standardized heights and weights for NHL players. Everyone wants to give themselves an advantage. But whatever he actually weighs in and his height is, McBain definitely was like the more physical guy, more of a quintessential power forward. I really liked his game.
Yeah, I did too. I thought he also fit in pretty well when coming right in. I think a lot of people were excited. And if I'm not mistaken, I think he got was it a goal or an assist in his first game?
I think it was an assist, but nope, he got an assist his third game. He got a goal his last game against the
Okay.
Predators, and a goal 3 days prior against the Minnesota Wild. So that was fun. He got a goal in his first game against the professional team where no, he didn't go to college in Minnesota. He went to Boston.
Yeah.
Uh,
But he was
got
a
a goal
Minnesota.
against
He
the
was a Minnesota prospect.
yeah. Yeah. So got a goal against his old team. Always great to see. Yeah, not really too much to complain about. I think he's kind of on a similar path as Smith.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what was really nice about these acquisitions as a whole, kind of like both when I lumping both McBain and Smith together is as the Coyotes were able to negotiate, take care of their own contracts, right? So like they started, 100% from year zero. It's like it doesn't matter what happens because like they had their rights to them. They just like we just acquired your rights and now negotiating power moves to us. We give you your contract.
Yeah.
Um,
And I mean, again, it kind of says that like, hey, McBain is a player who didn't think he had room in the Minnesota system. They have a lot of good players. It's a pretty reasonable assessment to make.
mhm.
And he's got room in the Coyotes. I'm not sure if he can get to the same place Smith. I think Smith is the more like skillful of the two from the limited experience I saw. Both only played 10 games. Not really enough to judge at this point. But McBain, I like his physicality. I like the power forwardness of it all. And as we've seen, like, Bear likes that kind of like
Mhm.
hard edge player. Armstrong likes that. So I'm
I
sure
can
he's going to get time and
I
take
can
advantage of it.
definitely see down the road Jack McBain being a pretty darn solid checking power a third line checking power forward.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I would like to, see like him get like, you know, Lawson Krause had 20 goals. Can Jack McBain in a couple of years have 20 goals? I don't know. It's definitely too early to see, but I like what he saw. Third line seems like a good fit for him. Maybe play up to second if the Coyotes aren't skilled enough. Hopefully by that point they are. Like we're
But
talking
here's
like
the
three
but here's the
years.
amazing thing is though we talked about centers, like um like McBain's listed technically as a center and Smith is listed technically as a center. Um, like the Coyotes are filling themselves with centers, and that's a good thing because remember we talked about last year they didn't have any.
Yeah. And as we've talked about, yeah, like Travis Boyd is your number one center. That's not ideal
No,
for the future.
we even said that with Nick Schmaltz being your number one center. That's still a problem.
Yeah. And there's no real like guarantee that the Coyotes are going to be drafting a center this year. Like, or, good thing about
Yeah, I
centers, they can
mean,
move to wing.
Logan Cooley is supposed to be a center, but
Yeah. But I mean, Clayton Keller was drafted as a center and moved to wing. So it's not, you know, the strangest thing to see a player make
oh
that
no,
jump,
no,
especially like a smaller player.
absolutely, yeah, absolutely, it makes sense, but we'll have to see, right? We'll have to see. Like again, as long as the Coyotes can bolster their center depth, like because centers are a lot more versatile.
Yeah,
Like a winger,
definitely.
like like a winger won't really slot well at center, but you can you can put someone who is raised up as a center and put him on the wing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think the Coyotes have like two really good players. I'll be curious to see what they can do next year.
Absolutely, I'm definitely excited. So, um, like I kind of already said it. Down the road he's going to be like that third line checking power forward. Anything else you want to see that you want to see from him in the next few years? Obviously, very much like Nathan Smith, he is also on a contract year because they were only signed to 2-year deals. Um, but what do you hope to see, like from him 2-3 years down the road if he's still a member of the Coyotes?
I would just like to see, like, I think both players need to develop their defensive game, like, but more so for McBain, like, when you are a third line person, you can't afford to be making mistakes. Like, you need to be, like, tightening things up. And it's understandable that a younger player is going to have those defensive lapses. Just need him to work on that in the coming years.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's going to be it for today's episode of Locked On Coyotes. If you like what you heard, don't forget to leave a review, like, comment, subscribe if you have yet to already. We're available everywhere you get your podcasts, including on YouTube. Don't forget to interact with us on social media. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/LockedOnCoyotes, on Instagram @LockedOnCoyotes, and on Twitter @LO_Coyotes. I am personally @Robyn_Leonio. Carl Pavlock as Carl Pavlock FFH. Interact with us, ask the question. We might answer right back or on a future episode of the Locked On Coyotes podcast. Thanks again, everyone, for listening to today's episode. And as a reminder, later this week, we got more draft profiles to get to. I want to thank once again Tony Ferrari for coming on last week. We got a little preview for those this week. We got from Scouching, Will Scouch will be joining us later this week to talk more prospects. All that coming up later this week. But anyways, that's it for today. Hope you guys are staying safe out there. Hope you guys are staying healthy. And don't forget to howl on.